This is Overheard Overnight, and I'm Christopher Mark. Tin soldiers and Nixon coming. We're finally on our own. This summer I hear the drumming, 4 dead in Ohio. Brutal lyrics from the song Ohio by Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young about the shootings of 4 students at Kent State University in Ohio on May 4th, 1970. Neil Young wrote the song as a direct reaction to the shootings. It was recorded and released within weeks of the incident. It is regarded as one of the greatest protest songs ever written. I still can't listen to it 53 years later and not get angry. University students being shot while protesting a senseless war in Vietnam. In 1963, President Kennedy increased U.S. involvement in the war, sending in some 16,000 advisors, whatever that means. Once Lyndon Johnson had settled into his presidency following Kennedy's assassination, he continued the escalation by sending 100,000 troops in 1965. And that had grown to almost 500,000, 500,000 armed militia, armed military by 1968. At home, the protests grew as the body count increased with no apparent tangible result. And it's 1, 2, 3. What are we fighting for? Don't ask me. I don't give a damn. Next stop, Vietnam. And it's 5, 6, 7. Open up the pearly gates. Well, there ain't no time to wonder why. Whoopee, we're all gonna die. That's the chorus from the Vietnam song performed by Country Joe and the Fish at Woodstock. And it sums up the protest culture that was growing and getting more powerful. Richard Nixon got elected in 1968. One of his campaign pledges was to end the conflict. But a couple of things transpired in 1969. First was exposure to the My Lai massacre, where US troops slaughtered nearly 500 Vietnamese villagers. Second was the reintroduction of the draft lottery, and that eliminated deferments for college students and teachers. Anger in the US boiled over when Nixon, instead of working to end the war, further escalated it by invading Cambodia. That occurred on April 29th in 1970, barely 5 days before the campus shootings. Now at Kent State, protests to the US involvement in the Vietnam War had been ongoing and had been growing since 1966. The core of the protesters was a group of students known as Students for a Democratic Society, SDS. SDS protests were turning ugly, and university officials were concerned about the increasing aggressiveness and violence. Leading up to the May 4th shootings, demonstrations attracted increasing numbers of students. But more worrisome to university and town officials were the threats to destroy the city and the university, real or not. Rumors of students with arms caches, plots to spike the local water supply with LSD, and building tunnels to blow up downtown stores. These were rampant. The city, in response, called in the National Guard. Now, by all accounts, the various protesting groups were active on campus on May 4th. They all resisted calls to disperse, and in the immediate run-up to the shootings, were pelting the guardsmen with rocks. Finally, it boiled over. The guardsmen responded by opening fire. Allison Krauss, 19. Jeffrey Miller, 20. Sandra Schur, 20. And William Schroeder, 19. 4 students gunned down. Tin soldiers and Nixon coming. We're finally on our own. This summer I hear the drumming, 4 dead in Ohio. And the question is why? In the aftermath, guardsmen said they had feared for their lives. Think about that. Heavily armed and protected militia versus unarmed young people hurling rocks. Seems incredulous to me to this day. America changed that day. The nation realized their elected governments could turn on citizens coldly. Kent State accelerated cynicism over the concept of US democracy. A lot of the 1970s movements gained momentum, civil rights, women's rights at the very top. Those movements were paid in blood. We're still paying for them today. Until next time.